All right, welcome to Computational Combat. We're looking at mixed martial arts through the eyes of a betting algorithm. I'm Dylan Grayson, joined as always by the brains of the operation, Johnny Koppelman, from a brand new apartment, and a man who has slept with Pollyanna Viana as many times as Colby Covington, Connor Protter. Yeah, I'm proud of that one. That's my best intro yet. I'm sure of it.
That's good.
Thank you. All right, so this week we are looking at UFC 260, headlined by a heavyweight title fight between Stipe Miocic and Francis Ngannou, a rematch.
Holy shit, does this card suck?
Yeah, I mean,
I like a couple fights on it.
The last four are good. It's a little bit top heavy. And of course, we lost the UFC featherweight title fight between Alexander Volkanovski and Brian Ortega due to COVID.
Arguably the best fight on the card as well, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Not even arguably.
I mean, people have different opinions.
No,
like the casual fan is excited about Ngannou, which I am too, but I think the other fight's better.
Yeah. All right, so we also have to look back at our results from last week. Yes. Johnny, how did we do?
No, it's good, but it was another good week. It went up 37%, which is something you'd love to see, with notable performances from Derek Brunson, who we had as an 81% favorite and pulled through as an 81% favorite.
Our biggest bet ever.
Biggest bet of all time, which was beautiful to see it do well. And Adrian Yanez, he won as well. And we had him as a huge
overdog.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know who I am, but we had him as a huge favorite. The books had him as a favorite.
Better, Johnny.
But yeah, that was a great week.
All right, so
that's 3 great weeks in a row since our bad 3 weeks straight.
Right, these things happen. It's just it was frustrating that we had 3 bad weeks in a row rather than at least being able to split them up. But now we're on a hot streak again.
Right.
And if people have been listening to us consistently over the last few weeks, they've, hopefully they've seen before our little dip and now they're seeing after it, and they get what's going on here. And I have a feeling some of these fights are going to play nicely into our hands, because I think there are a few fights on this card that casual fans may be swayed in a way that the algorithm will see through. And
I think I know exactly what you're talking about. We'll see if it's right, though.
Let's get right into it, starting with the early prelims. Give me a moment here. Okay, so we have a middleweight bout between Marc-Andre Barriault and Abu Azaitar. Quick question for you guys. When I share screen, does it just show black and then the UFC?
No, you were sharing your entire screen.
Mm-hmm.
So did it briefly show that other page?
We could see the porn, yeah.
It wasn't porn. It was a drug interaction checker for my homework.
Well, yeah.
Same thing.
Look, I have a feeling...
man. A hole's a hole.
Yeah, I feel like people are going to be more interested in this middleweight matchup than drug interactions between ciprofloxacin and theophylline. But that being said...
Those sound fake.
Yeah, they all do. This opening bout is really interesting here. Abu Azaitar is the brother of Mr. Potato Bag. And, he faces a guy on a 3-fight skid He ended a 3-fight skid with a knockout win that was immediately overturned for steroids. So fuck both of these guys. You have a roided out piece of shit versus a criminal piece of shit. They're both pieces of shit. I hate them. That being said, I think Abu Azaitar will probably win this one.
Yeah. I was pretty surprised when I was going through to see that Barriault's still in the UFC. I definitely thought he would have been cut because he did not look good in any of his losses either. I don't think Abu is as good as Ottman is, but I'm going to take him. He's shown that he can actually compete at this level, and I'm not really convinced that Barriault can.
So, in true algo fashion, it disagrees with both of you. And it has Marc-Andre as the favorite, 58%. The books also had Marc-Andre as a favorite. We have him as a slight greater favorite than they do, so much so that this is one of the smaller bets we have ever placed. Not the smallest, but one of. If you have money set aside that you're going to throw all of this Saturday, you'll be throwing 1.3% of that on Marc-Andre. And if you have a fund set aside that you're just betting the correct amount of each week, you'll be throwing 0.14% of the fund on that.
So it does happen a lot where the algorithm predicts something and I'm like, that's kind of bullshit. I don't agree with that. This is probably the first one where I've genuinely been like, what the fuck am I missing? What am I just not seeing? We'll talk at some point, because if this one ends up coming true, I don't know, I'll figure out like hot sauce or some shit, because I want to know what they're seeing.
Here's what I don't get. So the algorithm sometimes makes weird picks and whatever, and I've been proven wrong by it, so I'm not even going to doubt that. What's going on that the betting odds have Marc-Andre Barriault as the favorite? That's where I'm lost.
See, that could be because no one knows about these two fighters, so maybe there's such little volume on this fight that the lines can be swayed a lot, and they have to move the lines. I have no idea.
At least from Tapology, it's a toss-up fight or a pick-em or whatever.
So weird.
I mean, in fairness, like the one win that Abu has in the UFC is over Vitor Miranda, who I think got cut. Like, it's not a very impressive win, and it was actually 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago. So like maybe there's something there. Maybe we're really just all right. Bye, Dylan. Maybe we're just really conflating Ottman with Abu, but like I don't fucking know, man. Like, just going off of even off of like their stats, like I don't know. I'm curious to see where it goes.
Yeah, it's gonna be really weird when the YouTube like clips the different chapters on the video, and we spend so much time talking about this early prelim fight. I have a feeling somebody's gonna log in and be like, why did they spend so much time talking about this? Regardless,
because we all ramble, that's why.
And it doesn't make any sense is really why. But yeah, you all ramble, and people are gonna get used to it, and we go off on tangents a lot here.
So, I will say though, if you guys do think that Abu's gonna win, this is a perfect fight for you guys to choose to play some money on if you're gonna do so.
Right, and I may do that. I don't know, but I don't want to bet on a piece of shit like him. So, all right, moving on to our next one: Shane Young versus Omar Morales. So this one, I could have sworn wasn't going to make it to the actual fight night. 145-pound bout. If I recall correctly, Shane Young traveled with Alexander Volkanovski to America. So when Alexander Volkanovski tested positive for COVID, I was sure that him and also Jamie Mullarkey had to be pulled, but I guess they've been fine, and I guess they haven't been around Volkanovski. I don't know. Regardless, he's still here, and he's still getting tested, and he's still testing negative. So that being said, he's probably going to lose. I mean, Omar Morales, his only loss is to Giga Chikadze, and that is not anything to be ashamed of. Shane Young's got 5 losses on his record. I don't really think that he's going to turn out to be as good as Morales seems to be right now, but who knows?
So first off, I find it highly problematic that you didn't even think to mention the fact that Omar Morales' nickname is just Venezuelan fighter.
Oh, yes.
Or the fact that he's not from Venezuela.
We brought him up before when we were talking about the weirdest nicknames, when we were talking about the blonde fighter.
Well, so I was kidding. He is from Venezuela.
Okay, I was gonna say you got me.
That would have been even weirder. Yeah. So I agree. I'm going to be taking Morales in this as well. Young is really fucking high output compared to a lot of fighters. Not so much at featherweight. Featherweight's a pretty high output division, but like he throws a lot of shots. He specifically throws 6.0, about 6 shots per minute, or he lands about 6 per minute, which is pretty high. But at the same time, he eats a lot of shots. He doesn't have the best striking defense. And the striking that led to Giga Chad beating Morales was the fact that Giga Chikadze is extremely comfortable with like playing keep away and maintaining the range and picking people apart with shots. And I don't think that's the type of game that Young can play. So I'm going to take Morales as well.
2 for 2 on disagreeing, because the algorithm has Shane Young as a 58% favorite. The books, however, agree with you guys heavily, so much so that we copped a good amount of value here. If you have the money set aside, you're going to throw all of. You're going to put 13.2% on Shane Young, and if you have the funds set aside, you're going to put 1.39% on Shane Young. This is the mid-sized bet of the night, so you're going to see this come up a lot.
Yeah, that one doesn't, jump out to me as being crazy like the last one. All right, moving on to the next one. And Johnny, I'm going to have you just, pronounce both of the names here. Can we?
Hey, let's see. Here we go. Modestas. Can you give me the origin of the fighter?
Take a look at his nickname.
Oh,
dude.
Lithuania. Lithuania is okay.
Yeah.
So, Modestas, Bukauskas, Bukauskas.
I think
What
it's
is it?
closer to the second one, but then
Yeah, it's Bukauskas.
Oh wow, that okay.
It's also
And then,
it's not very Hispanic. It's not Modestas.
yeah.
oh, it just looked like it should say it that way, but okay, Michael. Oles, I don't know. I couldn't even. How?
All right, so let's
You have to do me dirty like that.
Let's get into this bout at light heavyweight between Modestas Bukauskas and Michael Oleksiejczuk.
Nope.
Oh,
That is the way I have heard the UFC announcers say it. So if it's wrong,
if it wasn't John
I'm
Anik,
sure
I don't.
John Anik calls him Oleksiejczuk.
just remember Francis Ngannou was briefly Francis Ngannou. So if I'm
Yeah.
wrong, I am in good company. That being said, both of these guys have only ever lost to names that are like actually kind of legit. And it's really tough for me to look at the two of them and say, oh, one of these guys is definitely better than the other. I feel like this is a coin flip for me, and I don't know either of these two stylistically well enough to differentiate. So I'm actually not even going to make a call here. This is dead.
Fence sitting.
So, first off, this is the battle of guys who just lost to Jimmy Crute.
Mhm.
I actually think it's interesting that you say that you can't really differentiate between their styles. I think Bukauskas he's much more of like an aggressive, will throw, just throw to connect, throw to do damage. Oleksiejczuk is much more comfortable with like, he honestly, I think at times he gets a little bit too patient, but he's got significantly better boxing in my opinion. The fundamentals of his game are a lot better. Bukauskas also, his one UFC win was fucking weird. That was the one where he just like threw a shit ton of elbows right into the finish. And the dude just like kind of didn't really get up, and I think it's officially listed as a win by retirement. Yeah, so I don't know. Oleksiejczuk has a lot of problems with his game, but I think he has better boxing. I think that will come into play here. And I don't really trust Bukauskas.
Give me one moment. The cat is making weird noises. Continue discussing.
Yeah, it's a cat, no shit.
So the algorithm takes Oleksiejczuk.
Oleksiejczuk.
Yes, as a 53% favorite. So kind of a toss-up, kind of alluding to how Dylan saw it as well. It just so happens that the books have, we'll call him Michael, as a much heavier favorite than we do. So we caught a lot of value on Bukauskas. If you have money set aside, you're going to put 6.57% on him. And if you're doing the fund, then you're going to put 0.69% on him. I think this is a great value play, considering that the algorithm and Dylan both see it kind of like a 50-50 thing, and we're catching some value in the latter.
All right. And moving on to the first of a few fights here, where I think that we can outdo some casual fans. Jared Gooden versus Abubakar Nurmagomedov. And I don't think it's really difficult to see what I'm getting at here, but I feel like there's going to be some people that see that last name and go, oh man, he must be really, really good. And, so this is, Connor, you know this better than I do, but you don't actually have clear answers here because no one does, because what the fuck happens there. But what is Abubakar's relation to Khabib? Are they cousins?
I think they're cousins. They're not related, I don't think. I just remember that after he got subbed by fucking David, whatever his name is.
Your last name's Nurmagomedov, and you get subbed by a dude named David.
David Zawada.
Yeah, David Zawada.
Yeah.
I remember
That's rough.
Khabib's dad was like, yeah, I was very fucking disappointed in him. I'll look up their relation real quick.
Right. So for anyone who's not familiar, Connor said that they were cousins, but also said unrelated. There seems to be some sort of thing, at least with. I don't want to make any broad strokes about
Yeah,
Dagestani
cousin.
culture because I don't actually understand, but it seems that Khabib's family calls like all of the people that he trains with closely to be like his cousins, even if they're not actually cousins. So maybe blood relation, maybe not. I'm not entirely sure, but regardless, I feel like some people are going to see that last name and assume that he's better than he is when he really isn't all that great. Jared Gooden lost by decision to Alan Jouban. That's not necessarily as bad as a submission loss to David Zawada that aged very poorly. Gooden has a few submission wins on his record. Nurmagomedov has a few submission losses on his record, and that sentence sounds weird for me to say, but that is the case. So I'm going to lean towards Gooden here, and I'm going to say it again. I feel like there might be some nice value here because I think the betting lines may be artificially inflated towards Nurmagomedov because of an assumed association with Khabib.
Yeah, this is a weird one for me. I think this is the one on the card that I'm least confident in predicting. The other one being the main event, but for completely different reasons. Yeah, Jared Gooden's one loss in the UFC is to Alan Jouban, but it was a 2021 Alan Jouban coming off of a how long layoff? Let me check real quick. I should have done that beforehand.
Ring rust is fake.
Yeah, coming off of it was actually not that long of a layoff. Only about a year and a half. But either way, he lost and like Jouban kind of looked like shit in the last round, but he still got the shit beaten out of him. I don't know. Nurmagomedov gets caught in bad submissions a lot. Like he kind of fell directly into the David Zawada submission. Gooden is a significantly higher paced fighter, but does eat a shit ton more punches. I'm not confident in this one in the slightest. I might just take Gooden as well. But I'm barely even confident saying that. I just don't want to not make a pick.
Dylan, you're wearing your experience with the algorithm completely on your sleeve here because the algorithm has Jared Gooden as a 70% favorite. And the books, which you also read really well, have Jared Gooden as a plus 205 underdog, which means, and yes, you know it, we're catching huge value here. And so much so that this is the tied for the biggest throw of the night. If you have money set aside, you're throwing 19.7%. It's no Derek Brunson 43%, but there's more value in this card. But anyway, you're going to throw 19.7% on Gooden. And if you're using the fund, you're going to throw 2.08% on Gooden. Yeah. So this is a huge value play, guys.
I like that a lot. And, I haven't actually looked at the betting odds. I did have one friend who has suddenly become a no longer casual fan text me about a particular fight. We'll get into it. Being like, I can't believe the betting odds for this fight.
We all know what you're talking about.
Yeah, we'll get there. But I predicted that this one would be that way. I didn't see the odds, but yeah, that makes sense. Casuals are gonna hopefully hand us some money, and I'm not saying that Gooden's definitely going to win, but there is a good amount of value there because
he's no plus 205 is what you're saying.
Yeah, he is not a plus 205 in this fight.
Right, and that's where the value is.
Moving on to the next one, and I believe that this is our prelim headliner because a few fights have been canceled due to COVID. Stay safe. This is a light heavyweight bout between Alonzo Menifield and Fabio Cherrant. So Fabio Cherrant is making his UFC debut, last-minute replacement. I forget what caused Menifield's opponent to pull out.
I think it was COVID.
Was it? Because I know that Hannah Goldie pulled out of her fight with Jessica Penne due to COVID, and then they couldn't find a replacement. I don't know what's going on here, but just simply, last-minute replacement. Menifield is far more proven than this guy. I'm not going to assume that Cherrant can get it done as a late-minute replacement in his UFC debut against someone like Alonzo Menifield. This was against William Knight.
Yep.
this was the one that weeks ago we thought it was going to be some huge bet, and then it got postponed, and then it got moved again, and then Mike got injured.
Yep.
Yeah. That being said, I remember writing up, I really like William Knight here. The algorithm called for a huge play last time, and the fight didn't happen. I wrote up this huge thing. Then I saw the cancellation. I just backspace, last minute replacement, and that was all of my notes. So Menifield.
Yeah, mine are the only thing I have written down is Cherrant is eminently hittable and has been knocked out before. It's unranked light heavyweight. It's not like there's a lot of good talent there, and it's not like there's a lot of like good technique there. Cherrant can maybe knock out Menifield. It's not like Menifield is infinitely durable. Like he got knocked out by OSP. But at the same time, I'm less likely to take the guy who's coming in on super short notice.
And then we have no call from the
call for that.
because we have a debut. And I just want to check. I know that Menifield versus Knight. Okay, yeah. So Menifield versus Knight was on verdict. Then they reshuffled the card. And Menifield versus Cherrant is on verdict. So the verdict pick is Menifield by knockout in the first. That's the most common pick in the world. Not unreasonable given the situation. All right, moving on to the next one. This is the pay-per-view opener. And this fight is between Jamie Mullarkey and Kama Worthy. So once again, Jamie Mullarkey, one of the Australian guys. I don't know how he's not also off of this card because I believe he did travel with Volkanovski and at least at one point trained with him. But, I guess if they keep testing him and he keeps testing negative, they're going to say it's fine. Or maybe I'm assuming that they were closer than they actually are. That being said, I'm going to take Kama Worthy here. He's shown himself to be able to produce pretty good upsets, and his only loss in the UFC is to the brother of Abu Azaitar. Of course, Mr. Potato Bag himself, Atman Azaitar, who is probably doing something shady, maybe PEDs, I don't know. If the reference isn't hitting for anyone that's listening when I call him Mr. Potato Bag. He was the one who broke the COVID bubble at a Fight Island event. It was the McGregor versus Poirier card, right? Where he slipped off his wristband that was proof that he had been tested and tested negative, handed it to somebody else so that they could sneak in despite not having been COVID tested, to hand him a duffel bag full of something. So obviously that sets off red flags. What the hell's going on? What's in that duffel bag that he had to sneak someone in against COVID protocols? And then a few weeks later, he's like, yeah, it was potatoes, and they rehired him. Like, are you kidding me? Like those
potatoes soaked in
obviously
EPO.
the type of response that you give when you know that you're going to get away with it and you don't give a shit about the consequences.
Right. And Johnny, I think you said it could be EPO. Yeah, who knows?
I said potatoes soaked in EPO.
Yeah. Look, at the end of the day, if that bag was genuinely full of potatoes, then I am 6'8".
No, dude, it was full of potatoes, and it was straight from Dillashaw's EPO Incorporated. It was a Grubhub order. Dillashaw cooked up some EPO potatoes and sent it over.
Doesn't seem like that would taste good. Regardless, okay. So I think Kama Worthy is pretty damn good, or at least has churned out a few pretty damn good wins. His record wouldn't suggest that he's that good, and when he debuted in the UFC, I thought he had no chance of winning. He was a last-minute replacement. He had a shocking knockout win, and then he followed that up with a pretty good submission over Luis Pena, and then he got knocked out by Atman Azaitar. I'm taking Worthy. I think he's good. I think he's worthy of my praise here.
You stole my joke.
I'll be here all week.
I wish you weren't. I'll be real with you. In the build up to this, I kept on fucking confusing Kama Worthy and Chaos Williams like over and over again. Like, could be like, yeah, Kama Worthy, the guy who got those insane knockouts and then fought Michel Pereira. And like, I kept on having to look at his page and be like, oh, he doesn't have that many good wins. Why do I keep thinking this? They both have names that are KW. And they're both weird because one gave himself 2 nicknames and the other's nickname is Death Star. Anyway, dude, I don't know, man. Mullarkey seemed like especially from his last fight with Ferris Zayam. I don't know. I'll pull a Johnny there. He just like doesn't seem very good at cutting off the cage, and he seems to really struggle with defense at range. And I don't know, man. Worthy hits at least reasonably fucking hard, and I don't think that Mullarkey has shown himself to be a very good athlete. I'm still riding the high of that no Mullarkey joke I made like last week or 2 weeks ago, but I'm gonna also take Worthy.
Well, the algorithm doesn't think he's worth the commas. So you throw a play, different play. The commas, the money. Come on, now we're here all week with Dylan. But we're
Johnny,
taking.
You can't pronounce names or make jokes.
we're taking Jamie Mullarkey. He's a 65% favorite on the algo. The books kind of have this as a toss-up, as close as it can get. Obviously, Vegas never gives you 50-50 because they're scumbags and they want to take your money. But that being said, if you're throwing everything, you're throwing 13.2% on Mullarkey. And if you have a fund set aside, you're putting 1.39% on him as well.
All right. Moving on to the next one. There's actually a fight we've discussed in the past. We've got the 15th ranked women's flyweight fighter, Jillian Robertson versus Miranda Maverick. We discussed this one a few weeks back, and then the fight was postponed. Not sure if it was due to injury or COVID protocols or what, but it's happening now. And this one, to me, is interesting because Jillian Robertson is pretty good. And Miranda Maverick is definitely not proven to the level that Jillian Robertson is. However, her last fight was a pretty damn impressive win. And I feel like she's going to be bigger and more powerful in the cage. She's shorter, but she's like built more. I feel like she's going to have a strength advantage. She's got a fun style where she's got pressure. She's not afraid to throw. And she's also a PhD student while she's fighting in the UFC, which is badass on another level. You know, Connor and I can both attest that doing doctoral programs takes up a lot of your time, and to be able to do that and then also fight in Invicta and then also fight in the UFC afterwards, like, if Miranda Maverick never wins again in the UFC, her getting to the UFC while also doing a PhD program on the side is a massive win, and she's an absolute badass. And just for that, I like her and I'm going to pick her. But also, I do think she has a good shot here.
Yeah, I barely have time to do this in my PhD program. We're literally doing this at 10 p.m. Eastern on a fucking Thursday night because that's when I'm free. I could not imagine also training, also fighting. That's really cool. Yeah. Also, she's only a few months older than me, which is weird.
But that makes sense because we're all
no, I know it's just it's
in like the same level of program
around my age.
Yeah. I didn't even get a master's, so I don't even know. I couldn't even imagine.
Yeah, but you were smart. You came right out of college and started working for money. I'm still paying for school.
I'm the real Jew out of us three Jews. Come on.
Are you kidding me, Johnny? I get paid to do my work.
Oh, that's true. That's true. PhD.
Yeah. Okay, guys, but at the end,
not the real kind of doctor. My mom's still disappointed. You know, whatever.
Right, exactly. My Jewish mother can at least tell her friends, "Yeah, my son's a doctor," and then eventually be like, "No, he works with dogs, not humans." But like,
oh, it's like the dentist thing from The Hangover.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm kidding. My mom's actually very proud of me. Going back to the fights real quick. Going back to the fights. I don't remember what I said the last time that we talked about this fight, but I keep wanting Robertson to break through. I really like her as a fighter. I think she's insanely talented, but she always struggles with putting it together, especially against aggressive and especially against athletic fighters. That's kind of what Miranda Maverick is. She's athletic, she's aggressive, she's willing to throw down, she's willing to bite down. I don't know what I don't see Robertson winning this one, unfortunately, as much as I would love for her to.
The algorithm will then make you happy because it has Jillian Robertson winning. It has her as a 57% favorite. The book has her as an underdog, but not too heavy of an underdog, but a plus 137. So we do catch value here, though. Through how money set aside, you're throwing all of, you're putting 13.2% of it on Jillian Robertson. And if you have the fund set aside, that is a 1.39% placement on Jillian Robertson.
All
I
right.
like how she spells Jillian with a G too. It spices it up a little bit.
Fair enough. All right. Moving on. So, Connor, you and I have time to get our bits ready on this one. Bantamweight matchup between Thomas Almeida and Sugar Sean O'Malley. So each of us, Connor and myself, have a separate nickname for Sean O'Malley after his fight with Chito Vera. I've been calling him Shin O'Malley, and Connor, you've been calling him...
I've been mixing it up between Sean Malley, because he lost his O, and Sean One Malley.
Yeah, lovely, lovely stuff. Regardless, Sean O'Malley is a good fighter. He's got the skills and he has knockout power. And, you know, on top of that, in terms of the stuff that really doesn't matter in the cage, but matters overall for your career as a fighter, he has a certain air about him. I personally think he comes off like a douchebag. But that being said, people are drawn to him and the crazy hair helps and everything about him. Like, he knows how to market himself. That being said, him sitting there and going, I'm still undefeated. Like, dude, you got your shin kicked out from under you twice. And the first time, the guy who did it dove into your guard, and that's the only reason you survived. And then the second time, the guy just elbowed you straight into unconsciousness. And I'm supposed to think of you as still undefeated? I mean, ridiculous. That being said, Thomas Almeida has had a drastic decline as of late that I was actually not aware of until Connor reminded me. I don't know why it was not in my memory that Thomas Almeida had like 3 or 4 losses in a row. But it's sad to see. He was a big prospect. He's shown himself to be susceptible to getting knocked out. I mean, getting knocked out by Cody Garbrandt isn't necessarily like a really bad thing. And this was before the like unbridled rage Cody Garbrandt that, you know, got himself knocked out swinging at the fences.
That's regular Cody.
Yeah, he was doing that against Dominic Cruz. Cruz just doesn't have power.
Right, I guess. Regardless, getting knocked out by Cody Garbrandt says that it takes at least a decent amount of power to knock you out. That being said, I think that Sugar Sean O'Malley has that power. So the question is, can Thomas Almeida kick Sean O'Malley in the shin fast enough? Because you know that Thomas Almeida has seen this. It is an Achilles heel, slightly anterior to the Achilles heel. Yeah, but I've never seen a fighter that has had so distinctly one medical problem that harms him in the cage since Brock Lesnar's diverticulitis got, you know, drummed on by Alistair Overeem.
What about GSP's ulcerative colitis or Dominic Cruz's plantar fasciitis?
Neither of them lost a fight because their opponents were able to target it.
Bring it back. Ulcerative colitis
problems or Frank Mir after the motorcycle.
Me and GSP have ulcerative colitis, and let me tell you, I don't know how they would target that. I don't know. Maybe they would, unless they gave him like, or they gave him some food the night before that gave him that triggered him. Because I've eaten food that's triggered my ulcerative colitis, and that would be he would lose the. I don't think he could fight with that.
Yeah, it would probably be like a Justine Kish situation. Johnny, that was a fighter who shat herself in the cage.
I know about that.
Okay.
Yeah, and then Michael
I've been on Reddit.
On top of her Duke.
Oh, anyway, regardless, that horrifying image out of my mind. I do feel like Sean O'Malley can knock out Thomas Almeida before we get to his shin being imploded again, but it is possible. Also, I just realized that I completely forgot to mention the last 2 verdict picks. So I'm just going to circle back right now. Kama Worthy by decision over Jamie Mullarkey, and Miranda Maverick by decision are the most common picks in the world from verdict for those previous 2 fights. Continuing on about this one, Connor.
Yeah, so I want Thomas Almeida to win this, but I don't think that he's particularly durable. I don't think that Sean O'Malley is either. I mean, we've seen that his shins clearly can't hold up that well. He has a very movement-heavy style. It clearly puts a lot of stress on them. Thomas Almeida does have good leg kicks as one of his strong suits, but his style really shows up when he's able to get in close and do a shit ton of damage. Like, I mean, the guy's a fucking buzzsaw with knees and elbows up close and in the clinch. Sean O'Malley, like all bullshit aside, all fanfare aside, like he can fucking crack. He hits incredibly hard. The shot that dropped Eddie Wineland was disgusting. He's got great kicks. He's very good at keeping range and pressing in when he really wants to or needs to. Maybe those leg kicks add up, but I don't trust Thomas Almeida to last long enough for them to add up in the first place, which is a shame because I like Thomas Almeida. He just seems like a nice guy. Plus, like, I'm always gonna root for people that we got to watch fight live.
Mhm. Who did we see
I
in
don't
fight again?
We saw him fight Jimmy Rivera at
Oh.
Long Island.
Oh wow, okay.
Okay. The verdict pick here: O'Malley by knockout in the first, but I really want to see. So the second most common pick is O'Malley by knockout in the second.
This is amazing. Oh my god.
O'Malley by decision comes next. I can't believe it. Almost no one is picking Almeida at all.
Which leads perfectly into what happens here because the algorithm has O'Malley as a 55% favorite. And let me tell you, that's not that convincing. The books have they have Almeida as, let me find his name, as a plus 270, which also isn't as extreme as I thought he would be. But it's actually probably pretty accurate for what I would think. But, the algorithm has Sean O'Malley as 55. We catch value on Thomas Almeida here because they have O'Malley as a stronger pick than we do. So you'd be throwing 6.57% of all your throw if you're throwing everything, or you'd be throwing 0.69% of your throw on Thomas Almeida if you have the funds set aside.
So now, if Almeida is able to implement his leg kicking game and get O'Malley out of there before O'Malley can knock him out, or compromise, I think it's his left leg, and he is an orthodox fighter. I think it's his lead leg. I can't swear to it.
I don't think he's orthodox.
Well,
Thomas Almeida?
Okay. No. Sean O'Malley. Regardless,
Sean O'Malley is a lefty.
Is he? Okay. So
I thought so. Wait, let me look that up.
If he can chop up that leg, O'Malley's going to lose a significant amount of his punching power. He won't have his base beneath him properly. If Almeida can get the job done with leg kicks early enough, and then he beats Sean O'Malley, it'll be a pretty big upset. But also, where does Sean O'Malley go from there? Because yes, he's facing a guy that can get knocked out and a guy that is on a skid, but he's also facing a guy with good leg kicks. If Almeida is able to win by kicking out Sean O'Malley's legs, every single fighter he faces will just spam leg kicks. And like, sure, O'Malley might knock a few out before they're able to do that, but any good fighter is just going to be able to finish Sean O'Malley with that.
I mean, yeah, that's a common story in MMA. You see someone who has a really impressive tear, and then the second they get figured out, they stop winning.
But
I mean, to be fair though, first, Sean O'Malley's a switch fighter, so but I think he predominantly stands southpaw.
Yeah.
But to go on that, yeah, last fight he got kicked in the peroneal nerve, whatever.
Yeah.
Whether that was and he had dropped it.
I'm glad you're still pronouncing things wrong when it's medical terms.
How do you say it?
I believe if you're talking about what I think, I believe it's pronounced like perineal, but not having to do get your mind out of the gutter, not having to do with the perineum, Connor.
I don't even know what either of those are. But anyway,
that's a medical term for gooch.
Oh,
yeah, I knew that.
But anyway, I think Sean O'Malley, I don't think you have to worry about him getting finished and losing because of leg kicks. And if he wins this fight, there are so many fights to make because he's just a walking, talking pay-per-view card, honestly. So that's why Dana White, I think, set this fight up because he gets this win. He could fight Dillashaw if Dillashaw beats Sandhagen because I don't think you give Dillashaw a title fight right away. And that's also a money fight. Or Garbrandt. Like there's big name pay-per-views.
I get that. And Connor, your point about, guys getting figured out, totally accurate. But this to me feels like something different because it's not something stylistically, right? There is just a giant flashing red target. It'll be very interesting to see. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But if it does,
I'd be very upset, and I don't know where he goes from there. Maybe he has a leg
Yeah.
issue. I don't know where you go from there.
I don't know what happens from there. All right, moving on here to the co-main event. And speaking of where do we go from here, welterweight matchup between the number 7 ranked Tyron Woodley versus the number 10 ranked Vicente Luque. My, oh my, how the mighty have fallen. Tyron Woodley went from being a dominant champion, even if he had boring fights, right? It didn't seem like there was going to be somebody that could step up and beat him imminently. I remember, Connor, I believe we watched the Woodley versus Usman title fight in your dorm room for some reason. I know we usually watch it in the common room. I have this distinct memory of us talking about it in your apartment, and both of us just saying, I don't get it. Woodley was a D1 wrestler, Usman was a D2. Woodley should have stronger hands. Like, what happened here? And ever since then, Tyron Woodley has not been the same. Yes. Does Tyron Woodley hypothetically have a wrestling game that he can implement here? Absolutely. Does he still probably have insane one-shot power where he could throw that crazy looping overhand as he, is backed up against the cage, run in that giant, like, what do they even call that? I don't want to say H-bomb, but it's kind of like Hendo's H-bomb. Just that huge looping overhand. Those things are still there, but he's been ridiculously gun-shy in his last few. He's barely thrown that. And also, he's been worked on. He hasn't won a round since 2018.
25 rounds straight lost, right? Because they were all main events.
Not 25, 15 rounds.
It's 15. Are you? Oh, okay.
He hasn't lost 5 in a row. He's lost 3 in a row. Yeah. That being said, regardless, man, Vicente Luque is good. Vicente Luque is probably just going to box him up. And I think Tyron Woodley is dead and gone. And he should really put his focus into his rap career, because that also sucks. He's done. He's got nothing left.
Hey, he could put his focus onto his film career, where his debut performance was getting his dick bitten off by a raccoon or whatever.
That's pretty sick.
Did we send that to you, Johnny?
No, I need to see that.
That's
pretty legendary, honestly.
Yeah, Connor's not shit posting there. That is a genuine.
I'm genuinely.
That's another round loss, though. That's another round he lost.
Yeah, right.
Make it 16.
Well, to be fair, does the referee take a point or not? Are we dealing with Mark Smith or are we dealing with Herb Dean? Question.
Put Herb Dean in there, and actually nothing happens.
No.
All right, so I will say, Dylan, one thing that's worth pointing out is that Woodley did try to come forward versus Gilbert Burns. He just immediately got hit with a huge shot, dropped, and then shelled up for the rest of the fight. That is one thing worth pointing out. It's like he did try to become more aggressive.
But for like 30 seconds, he ate one punch that dropped him, and then he never tried it again for the rest of the 25-minute fight.
And so if I was to think about this fight, if this goes like the last 3 fights of his, where he backs himself up against the cage and waits for the right moment, this is going to be a fucking miserable night for him, because Vicente Luque has incredible power in his hands. He's probably like a top 3 puncher at welterweight, I think. The dude fucking flatlines people. And he also has extremely good offensive boxing. If Woodley does not throw heavy hands, if he does not try to pressure, if he does not try to clinch up, this is going to be a bad night for him. The only thing, so I'm going to pick Luque, because how can you not? You can't pick Woodley to do something that he's shown that he's never shown in his career, and B, has specifically shown that he can't do in his last 3 fights. He is 38. He's almost 39 at the time of the fight. He's got really nasty arthritis in one of his hands. He's shorter. He's got a reach disadvantage against a guy who's comfortable jabbing. He's actually a fighter kind of like you were describing O'Malley. Like, Woodley was figured out by Rory McDonald, and it just took a while before people started implementing pressure jab game plans on him. So I'm taking Luque. The only thing which would seriously make, or the only caveat that I'll apply to that is that Luque puts up a very high guard, but his defense is not great. It would not surprise me to see the highlights of this fight where Woodley at some point just finally bites down and throws, and it pierces through that guard. Because Luque is not the best at blocking shots. He eats a lot of punches because, kind of like Almeida, he knows that he can throw punches back, and he knows that he's going to usually knock the other person out because of that. But like Barberena landed a lot of shots on him. If Woodley gets one off, that's probably it.
Verdict?
We got. Oh, yes, verdict. The most common pick in the world on verdict, unsurprisingly here, it's Vicente Luque. It has him by decision as the most common pick, overwhelmingly so. Second most common pick in the world being Woodley by decision, but about half as many people picked that. And then a few scattered calls for knockouts on either side. Yeah.
Yeah. So the algorithm has Luque as, the favorite, but not the closest ever, but pretty close. It has him as only a 51% favorite. So obviously, with Tyron Woodley being a plus 205, we picked up some value on him. So this is a straight up value play. Do I agree with it? No, I mean, but I think similar to what Connor was saying, him being figured out. Like I feel like half the people in the UFC now in that division, besides like Wonderboy and a couple others, grew up on Tyron Woodley. So they all figured him out. They all were in the division with him. They saw him reign the division, and sooner or later they adapted. So I don't know. I kind of don't like this play, but anyway, it's a value play, 6.5% if you're throwing everything, and 0.69% if you just have the fun.
Yeah, I mean, the 51% only makes sense, right? Like Woodley's the former champion. He should be able to win this. He should be able to throw those punches and drop him. He should be strong enough to be able to clinch up and wrestle, especially across 3 rounds, but he just doesn't do that anymore.
It would be interesting if he beats Vicente Luque, then it's like, how real good is the top 5 that Woodley is still good enough to beat this guy who we think should be good enough to beat Woodley. Then it's like, wow, the people in the top 5 that made Woodley look terrible must actually be absurdly good. Like there must be such a huge skill gap in this division then.
Yeah. All right, moving on to the main event and our only title fight of the night. But boy, is it an interesting one. It's time to party like it's late 2017 because it's the champion Stipe Miocic versus the number 1 contender Francis the Predator Ngannou. One thing before I actually get into breaking down the fight, I have to say, in case you're wondering why this has been an extra rambly podcast, ADD meds only last 8 hours and I take them in the morning. So at this point, I am all over the place. That being said, Francis Ngannou, one of the most apt nicknames in mixed martial arts history. My father, who is casual, he likes watching. I don't think he knows who Francis Ngannou is, but if you say the Predator, he's like, oh, I know who that is. Like that guy is terrifying, and he's right. Last time around, going into this fight, I would have said Francis Ngannou has been knocking a lot of people out, and if he lands one good shot on Stipe, it's all over. But if Stipe can survive and implement his wrestling game, he will probably win. That is exactly what happened, except that Stipe did manage to absorb a punch or two from Ngannou without dying, so very impressive. Very few others have been able to do that. Now here we are again. Obviously, we have that horrible loss to Derek Lewis for Francis Ngannou, where he literally just stood there and threw like nothing for 3 rounds because he was, I guess, scared of overexerting himself coming out of that Stipe loss. But then after that, he just decided to go back to knocking people out. And since then, he's had 4 knockouts in a combined like 3 minutes, which is ridiculously unheard of. His average fight time in the UFC is 5 minutes and 37 seconds. That includes a 5-round fight with Stipe that went to decision and the 3-round fight with Derek Lewis that went to decision. Like when he knocked out Jairzinho Rozenstruik last summer, the first punch that he landed flatlined him and the whole thing was over in 20 seconds. And they spent like 10 seconds just staring at each other first. And it wasn't even some weird fluky, like, oh, Jairzinho Rozenstruik just like leaned into a punch. Like, no, Francis Ngannou ran at him, threw 3, 4, 5 punches. Most of them missed. The one that hit, he was dead. Francis Ngannou has not shown himself to have improved in any of the ways that he would need to improve to make me not think this fight is going to go the same way as last time. But if he lands a good punch, it is all over. I don't feel like Stipe can survive a prime Francis Ngannou shot, even though he kind of sort of did last time. Like, maybe they didn't land as clean as they do on some other guys. Oh man, my brain, the real thinky parts of my brain are telling me Stipe, but there is some weird lizard brain back there that's going, Francis Ngannou. I'm gonna pick Stipe, but if I'm wrong, the memes will be glorious.
Dylan?
Yeah?
You know something really funny about UFC 220?
What?
Do you remember who you picked at UFC 220? And do you remember who I picked?
Oh, God. So, for context, long before this podcast, where Connor and I were in college, we had us and some other friends would log our picks in a big Excel spreadsheet, and we actually had a physical shitty title belt that would go to that month's winner of the predictions, because as broke college students, we didn't want to be throwing money every week. But who did I pick?
You were so confident that it was going to be Francis Ngannou, and
I knew you guys are going to switch, aren't you?
I spent the entire time in the build-up going, dude, Stipe's the better wrestler. He's got good game plans. He's going to take him down. He's going to win. What the fuck happened? However, so this time around, the question to ask, like you asked, is what has changed? So I think the way that you described it is that Francis has not shown you anything that has demonstrated a different,
Right.
like that he has something different. I disagree with that, not because I think he has shown something, but because I think he has not needed to show something. That is what I think is different. He's had a shit ton of really fast knockouts, so it's not that nothing has changed. It's just that he hasn't shown anything has changed because he's knocked people out so quickly. On the other side, what's changed for Stipe is that he's now 38, and he got brutally he ate a lot of disgusting punches against Francis Ngannou. He got brutally knocked out by Daniel Cormier, and then had 2 disgusting wars afterwards where he took a ton of damage. So he's older, he's taken damage. That, for me, is the thing which makes me want to pick Francis Ngannou. Do I think it's possible that a similar fight happens? Yeah, absolutely. But even if Francis has changed absolutely nothing, blitzing at Stipe and knocking him out is significantly more likely, and he only has to do it once. And even when he was absolutely exhausted against Stipe in the 4th and 5th round, he was still landing brutal punches that were snapping Stipe's head back. Does Stipe have the ability in the chin and the recovery to do that again? I don't know. And additionally, I think Francis would just have to be so incredibly arrogant and stupid to look at the last fight and change absolutely nothing about his camp, and to change absolutely nothing about his strategy. Even if he blitzes in again, I would be surprised if he didn't have better cardio, better takedown defense, things like that. So I'm going to take Ngannou. I want to pick Stipe because I picked him last time, but if you're older, you're slower, and you've taken a ton of damage, and you're 38 at heavyweight, I can't do that, man. Francis has taken fucking no damage.
I totally see your reasoning for having switched here. The thing is, yeah, you're right that Francis hasn't had to show any changes, right? Like, if he's suddenly improved his wrestling game, we wouldn't know because people die before he has the opportunity to show it. That being said, I truly do. Obviously, he can work on his cardio, and his cardio can be better this time around. But he's not going to be able to train his wrestling enough to be able to stop Stipe's wrestling. I think at the end of the day, this doesn't come down to whether or not Stipe's wrestling is as effective as it was last time, because I think it will be either as effective or similarly effective. I think at the end of the day, can Francis Ngannou land a bigger shot than last time? Or, hearing you say that, it makes sense. Can he land the same shots as last time, and can Stipe survive that? That being said, the most common pick in the world is Stipe by decision. It makes sense because we saw it happen last time, but you do bring up some really good points.
Yeah, so the algorithm has Stipe as a 70% favorite over Ngannou. And something crazy is that the books have Ngannou as the favorite. So this is another fight where we got a lot of value, tied for the biggest throw in the night. If you are throwing everything, you're putting 19.7% on Stipe. And if you have the fun, it's 2.08%. I just want to add in something interesting that I saw. I mean, you guys probably already knew this, but Francis Ngannou has one win by submission. I don't know what the submission was, so I wanted to tell you guys.
Oh, dude, that was the fucking Kimura.
Yes.
He watched a YouTube video backstage of someone pulling off a Kimura. He has it was Anthony Hamilton, right? I remember
Great
that.
memory.
He has
2016.
Hamilton up against the cage and he just fucking grabs his arm and it's like there's no technique. He literally just rips it back and drags it to the floor.
So a lot of times in jiu-jitsu, you'll see the Kimura used as a sweep, where somebody on bottom will grab a Kimura and then wrenching the shoulder to force the other guy to flip over. Francis Ngannou did that from standing because he is a fucking monster. He is not human. He sets up the Kimura against the cage and then essentially just pulls off what is half Kimura, half like professional wrestling suplex on this dude, and then obviously lands in the position and then just finishes it by brute forcing this dude's shoulder out of his socket.
I do also want to point out something about Ngannou that's kind of cool is that like this the Alistair Overeem win was fantastic. Like let's first point that out. That was a great win.
The 3.
Yeah, but this is the thing that I find interesting. Up until the Overeem fight, like the first Curtis Blades fight, the time that no one knew who each other was, so it wasn't like, oh, that's a sick fight. But then he fights Alistair Overeem, great win, loses to Stipe, and then loses to Derek Lewis, but then goes on to beat a red-hot Curtis Blades, Cain Velasquez, which is still a great win, and then Junior Dos Santos, which, I mean, that didn't age so greatly, but at the time, JDS was on a 3-fight win streak. I mean, this was in 2019, so it's a fine win. It's a fine win. And then the Rosen streak win. He was red-hot at that point, too, so he's really made a name for himself since he took the 2 losses. It's kind of cool to see people bounce back like that.
Oh yeah, totally recovered himself. I remember, my dad, obviously, when Francis Ngannou had his first rise, was like, oh yeah, the Predator, love him, really fun to watch. And then the Lewis fight happened, and he was like, I guess he's done. Like, I guess he just lost something. And then I was like, well, we should probably watch this next one, because like, if he still is gun shy, like, yeah, it's over. But like, if he goes back to his old ways and just throws, it'll work. And I remember watching, I think it was the second Blades fight, was with my dad.
And he was a red hot Blades on a 5-fight win streak.
Right, and it happened again. And I don't remember if I was there with my dad or if I was calling him on the phone, but I just remember him going, well, he's back. And yeah.
Something else that you guys are going to find crazy. Ready for this? So he has won in the UFC. I don't want to say the number because I don't want to count this up. I don't really know off the top of my head, but I will say this. Out of all the fights he's won, only 2 of them, and it was the first 2 fights, weren't in the first round. If he's won a fight, there is almost an 80% chance it was in the first round, because the 2 fights he lost was a decision in the 5th round and a decision in the 3rd round. And every fight he's won has been in the first round, besides these first 2 fights, one of them being Curtis Blades, which were still knockouts in the 2nd round. So it's kind of crazy. It's like, if you're going to bet on Francis Ngannou, your best bet to get the most amount of value isn't to just do a straight bet on him. It would be to do a bet on him knocking him out in the first round, because that's actually your biggest chance. That's like a great play, and you're going to comp great value there.
I feel like it might be smart to bet that the fight goes under 2 full rounds.
That too. That's another great bet.
So
it's like, that's another cool thing with betting. If you really know what you're doing, there's smart ways to get value out of things. It's like, okay, I know this fighter's going to only win really these ways, but if I bet outright on him, I'm going to lose value. So let's see the prop bets and see if there's a way I could bet on him, but I'm not actually betting on him.
There's like some DraftKings league I found where it's like it's not straight bets. There's like some weird stuff going on, and it technically counts as like a fantasy league, so it's legal in all 50 states. And I've been like looking at it. I think I'm going to hop in there for this weekend and make some interesting bets along those lines. But yeah, this was the fight where my friend told me Francis Ngannou is the favorite, and like, I totally see how Francis win this, but I do not see how he is the favorite.
I don't like people putting the person as the favorite that it's like, oh, if he lands that one shot, it's over. It's like, because in the heavyweight division, you could say that about everyone. Everyone in the heavyweight division has that power for the most part. If you're in the top 5,
Really say it about Francis.
Right.
yeah, but you could also really say it about Derek Lewis, Curtis Blades, Jairzinho Rosenstreich, even JDS has power on him too. Like you could say that about most guys. Stipe Miocic has a shit ton of power, and he's not even as powerful as a lot of those guys I just named, and he could still win this fight easily by knockout as well.
Right, absolutely. The thing is, most heavyweights have the propensity to knock each other out, at least at the high levels. But Francis Ngannou is unlike anything we have ever seen.
Right, that's also true.
Punching power. I don't know how it is possible for a human to hit this hard. It's terrifying.
Like a Ford Escort, almost.
Dude, like the Alistair Overeem knockout, that clip lives rent-free in my head. Like, just
oh my God, he literally turned off his PC.
Yeah, do.
Yeah,
like, his head. First of all, the punch sends his chin pointed straight up at the sky, right? And then, timber. You've got like a 265-pound man that just hits the canvas, and then his head bounces like a fucking basketball. And then Francis Ngannou was like, yeah, hammer fist. Like, oh my God. Okay. Honestly, if I had to choose between being blocked in a dark alleyway and I had to fight my way out, and on one end was Brock Lesnar and on the other end was Francis Ngannou, I would probably walk in the direction of Brock Lesnar.
No, Francis is gonna one and done.
But I like my brain.
Yeah, I would
hit me.
Hear me out. I go to Francis Ngannou because I feel like I could talk my way out of that way, whereas Brock Lesnar will just steroid smash me. He won't listen to me. He's just thinking about where am I going to get my next trend shot from. You know
Fair enough. Francis does seem like a very good man.
Yeah, he seems like I'd be like, listen, just punch me in the arm once. I'd be like, okay.
No, like you'll be fucked up from Francis, but research shows that getting hit repeatedly is the worst thing, and Brock would hit you repeatedly.
That's true.
Well, I'm glad that we were able to stay entirely on topic tonight and never once went on any weird tangents. That's great for the listeners who really only came here to listen to our betting algorithm and our.
You should include that as like a separate clip on YouTube. Is like Brock Lesnar in a dark alleyway. Just explain it to me further. Just like
no context.
Like we're going through. We got Vicente Luque versus Tyron Woodley. We got Francis Ngannou versus Stipe. Brock Lesnar in a dark alleyway.
Also, the separate clips of Dylan checks under his bed to see what his cat is up to. And then, of course, here's the verdict picked for the last 2 fights because Dylan forgot. So, great episode. And we will see you guys.
Listen, if any of my crazy parlays that I do every weekend hit and I get a crap ton of money, I am hiring an editor, and I am also, their first role would be to put a compilation of me mispronouncing names from the first episode to now and put that out.
Lovely. All right, we will see you guys next week.